In section 3, we will cover configuration. In the configuration, I'm going to show you how to configure that order code, how to look at how to order a D25, and utilize that order code in order to configure your D25. So to configure a D25, we have to create a project. We will utilize SGConfig. We've got a webinar on SGConfig if you want to go watch it. It's also available and published on YouTube. And how to create a device, create a firmware for that device, how to configure the applications in that device. You will be able to configure the aspects of your D25, whether it's a front panel, power, and then you will be able to configure your DC components and your AC components in the I/O application known as the plant I/O, and how the plant I/O populate the Win database application. I'll also cover very quickly Westmap application, which is used in order to maintain the D25. The D25 configuration is very simple, right? You start at SGConfig, you create an empty project, and then you add a D25 from your template, and you configure the D25 based on the order code. That order code is a key in order to simplify our configuration of the D25. Now that you understood the hardware, we're going to start and create a configured D25 device. In order to do that, the first step is to create a project. So we start the SGConfig, and there is an SGConfig webinar that we have done, although if you would like to review that SGConfig webinar. To create a project, you just click on the GE logo, create new project. Let's name it webinar project, D25 webinar. And these parts are left for you and your utility to put whatever you like. So if we would like to, for example, put in the model number of our D25 that I've shown you to show you how to order it. So to order the D25, we can start our store at ge.multilan.com. Right, we go under substation automation, remote terminal units, D25 IED. So if I would like to order a D25, right, the first thing that I'll do for an ordering guide is I would access this site, and you will see all the parts of the D25 that you can order. So let's say I would like a D25 with an LCD panel, right, or a GDP panel, right, graphical display panel. So I'm going to pick up the LCD panel 6. So as you can see, you're building your ordering code of the D25 here, which is very important. That's the same ordering code that will be in the back of the D25. So you will see 6.1. Let's say that we pick up this voltage level for our power supply. For a communication option, I'm going to pick the fiber communication option, and then we'll leave this empty. For a control card, let's say that we pick up the D25 KE control card, okay, and so we'll pick up the 613U9, okay, 32 trip close, and then we'll pick up the first. We will have only one digital input card, which means that you will have 32 digital input cards in this D25. Okay, and from an expansion memory model, we'll pick up the biggest memory model available. So D25, 20 megs. Okay, so that will be sufficient. And we'll take one voltage, one current, 5 amps CT. So what you've seen in the hardware, I'm just repeating it here where I show you how to order a D25. This D25 will come with this model number 613U91UU3CHUUUU. All right, and the rest of it will be it's a Gen 4 factory select boot ROM. So the factory will select the boot ROM based either on an existing firmware So let's say I got an existing firmware which is built by a technical application engineer at GE based on your specification. So once you give your specification to a technical application engineer, this engineer will be able to build your SAL number, which is the firmware for your D25. So let's say in this case I will say it's SAL 999.0. Okay, and that's how the factory will figure out what boot ROM is required for my D25. I've shown you in the hardware section where the boot ROM is in the main board. Okay, and that's it. Your D25 is ready. You can order all kind of extra equipment that's required. For example, you will need a Westmap cable. You will need a SGConfig 8. If you want it on a DVD, you can get it from here. Okay, so we start our SGConfig. We have built our board. We can put the part number in here if we want, so we can say 613 U91 UU3 CH UU1B, and that's the part number that we ordered. This is the D25 that we ordered. We can put it here, we can put it in the customer contact, we can put it in the notes. For a customer contact, you can put the GE or GE Multilin customer service support. Then we click OK. Now we've got an empty project. In order to create this project, this device inside this empty project, we need to add the firmware. So I can go to the firmware library, select import, and you can import the firmware from an existing project, which is the recommendation, because these projects are already built by GE, tested by GE, tested by our factory with your device. So I'm gonna get the firmware that was tested with my device, which is the Y1187B. I'm gonna get the SAL 9990. This comes with a plant IO, DMP, Goose messages, A083, which is a calculator, DTA that I will show you later in this webinar, and the B008, which is the system point database, and the P097, which is the plant IO that I will show you today, and P014, which is the Westmap configuration. Now I've got the SAL 999 in this project, so if I go back to the firmware library, I can see that the SAL is part of this project, and I can add D25 devices that have this project in it. So I go to the device templates, click on the D25 device, put it in. The minute you put it in that open workspace for your project, you'll get the D25 wizard. Click next, name my D25, we'll say D25 web. We can put the serial number, put the description. Anything that's not yellow, again, is optional for your utility customization. We click next. At this point, we can start to add our firmware. So we can select the firmware that we have added to this project, SAL 9999, and then we can select the hardware. So for the hardware, remember that ordering code that we just did a minute ago? We can start to select it here. So we start with 6, right? So that tells me it's an LCD, or tells SGConfig what kind of D25 we're dealing with, 150 volt DC, a serial XCOM. We selected number 3, which means we didn't use a serial XCOM expansion or the 2 serial ports. Instead, we used an FL expansion. And from a memory expansion, we went all the way and we got our 20 megs, right? And as you can see, our part number for the D25 is starting to be built up. So this is the first few integers in the part number, 6133, right? The rest of this is empty, and it's waiting for us to populate it through the P097 or the plant IO or the IO application configuration application, which I will show you once the device is ready for me to configure. So once the device is ready, we're going to access the device, we're going to configure the Westmap application, and we're going to configure the plant IO application. Then we will download our configuration. At this point, SGConfig is building our device with all the applications that we have in our SAL, and we have the option of turning on and off this application on as needed basis. So P097 that you can see right now, that's being built by the SGConfig, has our plant I/O. So in the world of the D25, there is data collection applications and data processing applications. Data collection applications stands for basically client application. It works with all the field devices gathering information. So one of the field information that we're gathering is the physical points, the I/O card that's inside the D25 that I've shown you, and the application that takes care of the 3 digital input cards, the 1K card, is the plant I/O or P097, which is this application, right? It constantly scans these cards for an update on the points and the status of these points. Our device is built by SGConfig, so we click Finish in here. And once the device is ready for us, we can put a picture on that device if we want, so we can import from anywhere in your computer. This is a very cool feature. So if you have a picture that you want to associate with this device, or if you don't and you just want to use something in the gallery, then you can select from the gallery and click OK. Click OK again. That picture will be always associated with your device. Now, in order for that to happen, you have to make sure that when you go to the preferences under the global settings, that this box is checked, which is the display device. And this comes as part of SGConfig. We did basically a session on SGConfig, which you can review. So my device is ready for configuration. I've configured the first pieces of my ordering code, and now I can open the device. I'll get a listing of the available applications. Now these are the enabled application by default, right? If we want to see all the applications, we can click on this box, and that will show me all the applications that are available that has been downloaded to this box. Obviously, I just want to see only the ones that I need to configure. So the applications that we need to configure in this demo is the plant I/O or P097, the Westmap application, and once you configure the plant I/O, all the points will populate in the Win database, and we'll show you how that happens. So we'll start with the Westmap, which is B014. Under B014, there is an icons and there is a tables tab. We'll start with the tables tab. So on COM0, we're going to configure it to single column with description. And then we go over to buffer configuration. It's up to you and your utility philosophy for SOE buffer. How many SOEs would you like to see in your SOE display? So let's say we would like to see 100 SOEs, 100 COS, 40 info or warnings or errors in the error log, and then for every time you log in, there will be a buffer that's part of your Westmap configuration guide. If you want to get more information, about 10 buffers per login. So if I put 20, that's sufficient for one login. If you want to have multi logins into Westmap at the same time, you might want to increase that number by 10 if you have 2 logins, or 40 if you have 3 logins, and so on. So for the SOE location, we can place it in RAM or NVRAM. The reason you would place it in an NVRAM is in case the power got cut off to the D25 and you want to know all the historical reasons as to how the power got cut off, then you would place it in NVRAM. When you turn on the D25, you can still get all the SOE events that took place, and you can take a look at these SOE events. Okay. And then we configure the user configuration. This is where you configure all your users. So for every user, what screens can he access inside your Westmap, and you know, what is his welcome message, his specific welcome message. So if you read the configuration guide, if you want him to access to be super user and access all the screens, then you would put -1 in here, and that will give him full access to all the screens. If you want him to specifically access certain applications, then you can put certain applications. The username and password, which can be changed in here in the configuration, and then that user specific message. So we say welcome to our D25 webinar. Okay, that message will flash very quickly once the user log in. This is a last message for every user, which you can customize per user. For a generic welcome message that will be displayed to every user that log in, we start, basically the screen is from 1 till 20 rows, and you just decide where you want to place your information. So we'll say this is welcome to D25 webinar session, and then you leave 2 rows in between the lines. Let's put today's date, which is the date of the webinar, 23rd of June. So this way we time tag when was this configuration downloaded. And you can put it in normal or in inverse. When it's inverse, it's highlighted against the background, and we say on row number 10. So remember, leave always 2 rows in between. We'll say login. Okay, and that's it. Your Westmap application is fully configured. Okay, next thing, I'll show you how to configure the Plant.io application. So we save our configuration, and now we can go ahead and configure our Plant.io configuration. For the Plant.io or the I/O configuration, all the points that are pertain to our data collection application are listed in this DCA pseudo point listing. So let's take a quick look at the DCA pseudo point listing. What you will find in here is from 0.97 digital inputs onward. Why 0.97? Because like I said in the hardware video, there is 3 digital input cards. Each digital input card has 32 digital inputs. So that means that the first 96 digital input points are reserved for the hardware terminated points from the field up to the D25. Okay, so point number 97 will show you if the HC11, which is on the main board from the hardware video, whether it is on or off, or is disabled, or has a buffer overflow. All of these states will be specified in here. So it shows you about all the available digital outputs, analog inputs, so all the analog alarms and analog outputs for the DCA configuration. So all of these points are available in here. Okay, and then we go into our DC configuration. Now what we're doing is we're populating our DC section of the ordering code. So from the ordering code, we have 613U, or there is no analog input port. That can be added in the future. We have number 9, which means that we have 32 control phase 40 on the background of it. We have 32 digital inputs, only 1 card. Okay, what's the impact of that once we configure it like this, 091000? So what happens is this 1 in here turns into 32 digital input points, and the rest of the points will be unavailable, even though it will still reserve those 96 digital input points, just in case in the future you added that card to your D25, but it will show you only the first 32 as available points. Okay, the same for the digital output points. Right now it will show you that some of the points, the 32 digital output points, all on. There is no analog input, but if you enable the analog input in the ordering code, then it will allow you to edit. And this is the place where you can start to add your termination. So if this is connected to your transformer alarm, high alarm, low alarm, right, then that's where you would start to add your termination naming. Okay, that's as far as configuring the DC component of the I/O card, right? You can also configure the AC component. So if you remember from the hardware video, we said at the bottom of the D25 there is these little modules that are CT and VT, current transformer and voltage transformer, that are AC component, that act as an AC component of the D25. So we can go into the AC configuration. So in the hardware interface, we configured this part of the ordering code and the memory part. In the DC of the I/O, we configured this part of the ordering guide, of the ordering code. Now we're finalizing and we're configuring this part of the ordering code. So this part can be set up as per the ordering code to C, H, that will give us 120 volt PT at 2.5 nominal, 5A CT at 16 nominal. We're not using any of the other slots, we're leaving them for a future expansion. CHUU. So now we have completed our ordering code inside the IO 613091003CHUU. You can go ahead and lay out how these points are connected. So I can select buses, right? How many circuits are we talking about? And then we can assign each current transformer to which phase it's connected, and each voltage transformer, PT, right? And you can decide for each bus what's the nominal phase voltage. Is it line to line or line to neutral, right? So all of this can be specified in this interface. Accordingly, the points will be enabled. So as our AC points that are connected with these circuits will be enabled as we enable the configuration. So again, if we go 1 and I connect this to CT0, CT1, CT2, and PT1, PT2, and PT3. So we go to the IO configuration, it's enabled, right? All of these points, as you can see, are enabled. Okay, so let's disable all of this, right? We'll just set it to 0, take it all out, take it all out, right? And we just click OK. Now we have finished our ordering code for the IO card, and all you need to do from this point is just populate in your point descriptions. So to populate in the point descriptions, there is an easy way to be done inside the Win or the B008 or WSDAC interface node database. It's just a huge database that basically monitors in and out between the applications, between the client and the server application. So we can go to the system point database, right? And while highlighting the system point database, you can see the D25 plant IO has reserved 631 points. That's basically the 97 digital inputs plus all the digital inputs that are associated with my AC points, and the points that are talking about the behavior or the status of all the alarms inside, like the HC11 status and all of that. So when I go to descriptions, right, I can export these descriptions if I want, and I can import them. So I can export it, all digital inputs, click OK, to my desktop, for example, click OK, right? And I would get a file on my desktop. Just gonna cancel a little to show you that file. It's just a DI text file. When I open it, it looks like this. You can open this file inside Microsoft Excel. So Microsoft Excel starts up, and I go File, Open, go to my desktop, open this text file that we just exported outside here. Right, so if I want, I could name this 1, just drag it across. I've got my transformer alarm 1 to 32 named. I know in the field that there is no such a thing, but I can go File, Save, can save it as a text file again. Close it. Now when I open my text file, all of this has been already populated. So I can go back to my SGConfig, open my SGConfig, go back to my Win database, go to my descriptions. So we exported. Now we're going to import all digital inputs. Click OK. It asks me for the file that I want to import from. Desktop. Boom. It picked up the file because that's the file that's named DI descriptions. As you can see, all the naming is in here. So you can use a good tool like Excel in order to export and import your points into the Win database, right? You don't have to do it manually inside this interface. Nevertheless, it is possible, right? And then we click OK. Now my Westmap is set up, my Plant.io is set up, and my Win application is set up. So B008, which is the Win application, B014, which is the Westmap application, and B097 is set up. I click Close in here. My device is showing a red button, a red square, which means that it's not configured. Now we can generate the configuration on that device. The device has been generated with 0 errors, 0 warnings. So what we can do is we can connect to our Westmap. To connect, we go to Options, and today everybody has a USB to RS-232. So to connect to the RS-232, I need to find out where is the port that I'm connected in. When I bring up my interface, I can see it is on COM number 5. So I'm just going to select COM number 5 from here, right, as serial. You can connect via modem, you can connect via LAN if you have your D25 set up already on the LAN, and you can select your baud rate for download and whatnot. So we're just going to select the interface through COM 5. I'm connected to the D25. So I'll turn on my D25. So as you can see, the D25 is starting up once we turn on the power to the D25. And what it is basically doing is like booting your computer, right? It goes through, checks all the RAM, checks the flash memory has the firmware in it. Most D25 have the firmware in it. If it doesn't have the firmware, you would need to download the firmware, which is covered in the manual and in other webinars on how to download the firmware to a device. Okay, and my applications are starting. Okay, so I go into my Westmap, electronic RD. Right, we go into the system functions, 68K monitor, and then we press F7 to download the configuration. And my download would start. Our configuration download is done. Of course, you can download at a higher baud rate if you require to download faster. It gives us a screen, says, do you want to boot? Click yes, boot. The booting process starts again. It does a RAM test, which is, like I said, it's like testing your computer for all aspects of the D25 that are properly running. Our device is ready. Press enter. We get the proper welcome message. So welcome to the D25 webinar session. That's what we configured, 23rd of June. If you see this is on an inverse background, log in. Once I log in with the name and password, Westtronic RD, when I press enter, that message that we have configured for me as a user is flashing here. Welcome to the D25 webinar, right? And now we get to the Westmap screen. So I'll show you around the Westmap screen what's happening. We can go to the information log, or they like to call it error log. We can see that none of the applications that I had is showing up as a problem. We can look at the 68K monitor. In the 68K monitor, I can type the word image, IMG, and that will show me what version of application I've got. Firmware number SAL99900, which is the firmware that I used for configuration. Okay, device status display. There is no devices here that we are connected to. Okay, and then we can go into our digital input display, and you can see all the definitions of the points that we terminated, right? So transformer alarm 1, transformer alarm 2, transformer alarm 3, and so on. So I'm going to show you Westmap, and in Westmap, as you can see, the digital input points are displayed here. I've got a little test set that's connected to my digital input one. I'm just going to flip the first digital input, right? And as you can see, we see on the screen, right? If we flip it off here, I'm going to flip it off, and we see off on the screen. The good thing about the Westmap screen is that you can also open two screens at the same time. Okay, so part of Westmap is you can open an extra window. So if I click in here, and you can see those commands at the bottom here. So open a new window, right? So I can have two windows in here. So let's say I want to see another digital input display. While I'm looking at point number 1, I would like to see point number, whatever, the last point, 96. So I go to point 96 and it's showing stars because that point is offline. And then my point 97, which I showed you as a pseudo point, is showing that the HEC11 is not disabled, it's up and running. There is the DSP is up and running. All of these parts of the D25 are up and running. The DC analogs, because we didn't have a DC analog board in there, so the DC analogs are showing as disabled, which is true. Okay, so this is as far as I'm going to show you in Westmap. Then we will start on our last piece of this video. Thanks. The D25 configuration is very simple, right? You start at SGConfig, you create an empty project, and then you add a D25 from your template, and you configure the D25 based on the order code. That order code is a key in order to simplify our configuration of the D25. I will open the phones for questions and answers, and I welcome you to share your questions, answers, or concerns, and please bring it forward. Thanks. I'll unmute the phones.